thing, and we just tickle this brain area. What we found is that animals and humans love that feeling. In fact, they will work for that feeling more than they will work for other stimulation. And in
so I've got a bunch of questions about that. So the first is, how do you think that's related to hypothalamic dopaminergic release in exploratory states and the psychomotor stimulative effects of drugs like cocaine and amphetamine? And then second, if you put someone in a chronic state of activating that brain area, say you did that by teaching them to approach their fears rather than to run from them, would that produce epigenetic changes that would transform them physiologically?
Okay, so both very important questions. First of all, the dopamine system is absolutely critical here. In the animal studies, we identified, because we could place tracers in the brain and measure connections, that indeed this brain area in the midline thalamus connects directly to the major hubs of dopamine release in the brain. They have names like nucleus accumbens, et cetera, ventral tegmental area.
Right.
That was great because it confirmed for us that.
So it is tapping the primary approach-related positive reward system.
That's right.
But it's a very major nucleus that allows that to happen, particularly in the face of voluntary approach to feared stimuli.
That's exactly right. And one thing about the dopamine system that's so important and also explains a lot of pathology, but also a lot of human evolution, is that we have basically one major reward system, which is the dopaminergic system. I sometimes like the analogy that, nowadays you hear about cryptocurrency or the dollar versus the euro versus the this versus the that. There's only one currency in all of reality, actually, and it's dopamine. Whether or not it's the dollar backed to dopamine or it's euro backed to dopamine or Bitcoin backed dopamine. In the end, whether or not someone has $1 billion or $2 is really that currency resides as something that's transacted in the real world, but their notion of power and potential is dopaminergic. And so too, the potential for mates, the potential for food, how much food you have, how much meat you have stored in the freezer tells you a lot about your security and well-being for you and your family, right? And that is translated into a dopaminergic internal representation of how safe and secure you are, et cetera. So this system of fear versus confrontation taps directly into the dopaminergic system. And there's a beautiful set of studies that were done in the 1960s, published in the journal Science, as one of the top journals to publish in. Again, this is not work that I did, but where they gave human beings, the option to stimulate a number of different brain areas, just sitting in the clinic. And some brain areas would evoke feelings of drunkenness, others would evoke feelings of anger, others of sadness, others of sexual arousal. And the area that these subjects all preferred to stimulate the most, in fact, they would just sit there and lever press pretty much all day long, was this midline thalamus area. And the subjective feeling that they reported, I find this interesting and would love your thoughts on this, is one of mild frustration, anticipation of something, although they didn't know what.
Yeah, anticipation.
And it's this idea, I think, that it's tapping into the dopamine system. And the dopamine system...
The dopamine system says something good is going to happen.
That's right. The key...
It says something good is going to happen. Something good is going to happen. And it's an appetitive state in some sense, because it doesn't signify the acquisition of... It's not satiating. Right. It's appetitive.
That's right.
And so it drives you forward. And you might think that being driven forward would be unpleasant, but if you're activating the systems that drive you forward voluntarily, then that's the most positive form of positive reinforcement you can have. I think I read animal researchers who said that when they watched animals who were bar pressing to receive stimulation in those brain areas, the animals would look forward as if something was about to appear that they wanted to have appear.
Incredible.
So that was part of that apprehension. It's a hope system in some sense. Right? It's the elicitation of hope.
That's right. It's dopamine, and here I'm robbing words from others, like my colleague Anna Lemke, who, it's not about having, it's about wanting. It's not about pleasure as much as it is about craving and motivation and drive. And something critical about
And Panksepp called it seeking.
Yeah, brilliant. I never met Panksepp. Did you? You met Jaak?
I met him online. We were in a neurological chat room, so to speak.